I was rushing home to my beloved wife, elated with the deal I had just signed. I had resolved all the issues earlier than planned and wanted to surprise her. But she surprised me. In my house, in my bed. At first, I couldn't believe my eyes. But it was true, she was betraying me, brazenly and brutally. And at that very moment, I decided to be cruel to her. Because she deserved it. But no, I didn't make a scene right there. I was much smarter than that, and she sensed it the next morning. I imagined her panic when I didn't return from my business trip and my phone was disconnected. I was just gone forever. But let's back up a little bit in this story. The deal had been months in the making. Negotiations stretched late into the night, across boardrooms filled with expensive suits and overpriced coffee. I had been grinding for years to get to this moment, long nights, early mornings, missed weekends. Sacrifices. But it had all paid off. Today, I signed the final paperwork. A multi-million-dollar deal. More money than I had ever dreamed of. Enough to set us up for life. Enough to finally breathe. I should have been in New York for another day, celebrating with my partners, but the first thought that hit me when I put the pen down was Camila. My wife. We had been together for nearly a decade. She had been my rock in the early years, cheering me on when my business was barely breaking even. I remembered the way she used to look at me back then, proud, excited, like I was her whole world. And now, after years of grinding, I could finally give her everything she deserved. So, instead of spending another night drinking overpriced whiskey with executives I didn't care about, I booked the earliest flight home. I wanted to see the look on her face when I walked through the door a day early. Wanted to tell her in person that we had finally made it. The flight was short, but my mind raced the entire way. I kept picturing us at the dining table, the same one we bought together when we moved into our house. I could already hear her gasp when I told her about the deal, feel her arms wrap around my neck as she whispered how proud she was of me. I should have called. I don't know why I didn't. Maybe I wanted the moment to feel more special, like a scene out of a movie. Or maybe, deep down, some part of me already knew. Either way, I didn't call. And that's how I walked straight into the biggest betrayal of my life. When the plane landed, I grabbed my bags and jumped into a cab. The entire ride home, I kept thinking about how things would change for us now. I could take some time off. Maybe we'd finally go on that trip to Italy she always talked about. I even thought about starting a family. Now that I wasn't constantly drowning in work, maybe it was finally the right time. I was exhausted but excited when the taxi finally turned onto my street. It was nearly midnight, and the roads were empty, the streetlights casting long shadows across the pavement. The familiar sight of my house up ahead brought a sense of comfort, at least for a moment. Then I saw it. A gold Mercedes parked in the driveway, right in my spot. I blinked, my tired brain trying to process it. Camila didn't drive a Mercedes. Neither did I. The driver slowed down as we reached the house, glancing at me in the rearview mirror like he expected me to give directions. "This your place?" he asked. "Yeah," I muttered, still staring at the car. He pulled to a stop at the curb. I didn't get out right away. My fingers tightened around the handle of my briefcase as I tried to come up with a reasonable explanation. Maybe she had a visitor. Maybe a friend had come over. But who visits someone at midnight on a weekday? The house was dark except for a faint glow coming from the upstairs window, our bedroom. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. I took a breath and forced myself to think logically. This was ridiculous. I had no reason to jump to conclusions. For all I knew, Camila had a perfectly good explanation. Still, something about it didn't sit right. I pulled out my phone and hovered my thumb over her name in my contacts. I considered calling her, but something stopped me. If she was awake, she would hear car pull up. If she was asleep, I'd be waking her for no reason. And if she wasn't alone? I pushed the thought away before it could fully form. Instead of calling, I pocketed my phone and reached for my wallet, pulling out some cash for the driver. I handed him the money, grabbed my bag, and stepped out of the cab. "Have a good night," the driver said as he pulled away. I didn't respond. I stood there for a moment, staring at the Mercedes. It was a newer model, polished and expensive looking. The kind of car that stood out in a neighborhood like ours. I glanced at the license plate. It wasn't familiar. Not a rental. Not a neighbor's. I moved toward the house, my footsteps slow and quiet against the pavement. My heartbeat had picked up, but I wasn't sure why. I reached the front door and hesitated. I stood outside the house for a long moment, breathing slow and deep. My pulse was steady, but there was a strange tightness in my chest, like my body knew something my mind hadn't caught up to yet. The night was silent. No cars, no barking dogs, not even the rustle of wind in the trees. Just stillness. I reached for the door handle and pushed it open slowly. The lock had already been turned when I first stepped inside earlier, which meant Camila hadn't bothered to bolt the door before going to bed. That alone was unusual. She always locked up. Always. The hinges let out the faintest creak as I stepped over the threshold. The house smelled exactly the same as it always did, warm, familiar. Like vanilla candles and fresh laundry. Like home. But something was off. I couldn't put my finger on it yet, but the air felt different. Heavier. Like the walls themselves were holding their breath. I set my bag down near the door, moving quietly across the hardwood floor. The living room was neat, just the way she liked it. A folded blanket on the couch. A half-finished cup of tea on the side table. Everything looked normal, except for the jacket draped over the back of the couch. It wasn't mine. Dark brown leather, expensive looking. I walked over and picked it up. It was heavy, the kind of jacket that belonged to a man bigger than me. I turned it over in my hands and found a wallet in the inside pocket. For a brief second, I considered opening it, but I didn't. I already knew what I would find. My stomach tightened, and a strange calm settled over me. I draped the jacket back over the couch, exactly as I had found it. Then I turned my gaze to the staircase. I moved toward the staircase, every step measured and deliberate. My heartbeat had picked up now, steady but strong. Then I heard it. A faint creak from above. It wasn't loud. Just the soft, familiar sound of someone shifting their weight against the old wooden floorboards in the bedroom. I stopped at the base of the stairs, listening. Silence. For a split second, I wondered if I was imagining things. Maybe it had been nothing, just the house settling, the way it sometimes did late at night. But I knew better. I climbed the first step. Slowly. Carefully. My hand hovered over the railing, but I didn't touch it. Another step. Then another. The second-floor hallway stretched out in front of me, dark except for the thin sliver of light spilling from the bedroom door. It was cracked open, just barely. My pulse thrummed in my ears as I moved closer, my breathing steady and controlled. I could hear it now. Soft, slow breathing. The kind that came from deep, undisturbed rest. I stepped forward, my shadow stretching across the floor as I reached the doorway. For a second, my brain refused to process what I was seeing. My body locked up, as if freezing in place would somehow change reality. But nothing changed. There she was. Camila. My wife. Lying in our bed. Wrapped around another man. The sheets were tangled, their bodies pressed together, completely unaware of the world around them. My stomach twisted, a dull, sickening weight settling deep in my gut. The kind of feeling you get when you take a step and realize too late there's nothing beneath your foot. That slow, helpless drop before the fall. I felt nothing at first. Not anger. Not pain. Just a hollow, numbing quiet. I had spent the entire flight home thinking about how she would react when she saw me walk through the door. The surprise, the excitement. I imagined us sitting at the kitchen table, sharing a drink, talking about the future. But this was the reality. The woman I had loved, the woman I had built my life with, was lying in my bed with someone else. My breathing was steady, but my hands curled into fists at my sides. I should have seen this coming. The late nights. The little lies that didn't seem important at the time. The moments where she seemed distant, distracted. I had ignored it all, convinced myself it was nothing. But it hadn't been nothing. It had been this. A complete and final betrayal. The man beside her shifted slightly, his arm draped over her waist, his face buried against her shoulder. He looked comfortable. Settled. Like he belonged there. I felt my jaw tighten. I could have shouted. I could have flipped the bed over, yanked him out, and thrown him onto the floor. I could have woken them both up and demanded answers that wouldn't matter in the end. But I didn't. Instead, I stood there, staring at the scene in front of me, and made a decision. This wasn't going to end with a fight. It was going to end with me winning. I pulled my phone from my pocket, my movements slow and deliberate. My hands were steady as I raised the camera and snapped a picture. One. Then another. Just enough. Then, without a word, I turned and walked away. I walked out of the house and into the night, the cool air hitting my face like a slap. My mind was clear. No hesitation, no second-guessing. Just a single, unwavering thought. This was over. I wasn't going to waste time screaming at her, throwing accusations, or demanding explanations that wouldn't change a damn thing. She had made her choice, and now, I was making mine. I didn't stop walking until I reached the end of the block. The neighborhood was quiet, dark windows lining the street, everyone else in their homes, their beds, their lives. A life I no longer had. A cab approached, its headlights cutting through the stillness, and I raised a hand. It slowed to a stop, and I climbed in without looking back. "Where to?" the driver asked. I gave him an address. Not a hotel. Not a bar to drink myself numb. My lawyer's office. It was late, but I didn't care. I pulled out my phone and typed a message as the city lights blurred past the window. "Need to meet ASAP. It's urgent." I hit send, knowing full well that no matter the hour, no matter the situation, he'd get back to me. I had hired him years ago when my business started taking off, and he was the best money could buy. The phone buzzed within minutes. "Come in now." By the time I arrived, his office was dark except for a single desk lamp casting a warm glow over stacks of legal documents. He was already waiting, his suit jacket draped over the chair, sleeves rolled up. He took one look at me and nodded. No questions, just business. I sat down and placed my phone on the table. Then, in a calm, even voice, I said the words that would set everything in motion. I want a divorce, and I want it done fast. He didn't look surprised. He had drawn up the prenup himself years ago and had seen enough cases like this to know what was coming. He pulled out a notepad and clicked his pen. "Tell me everything," he said. And so I did. I laid it all out. The late-night flights, the gold Mercedes in my driveway, the leather jacket on my couch, the creak of the floorboards upstairs. The moment I opened that bedroom door. The moment I saw them. The way I stood there, silent, watching my entire life collapse in a single instant. My lawyer took notes, but he wasn't writing down emotions. He was building a case, working out every possible angle. "Good thing you had the agreement," he muttered, flipping through the papers in front of him. The prenup. At the time, Camila had signed it without hesitation. We were in love, and she had laughed when I brought it up, waving me off like I was being paranoid. "We'll never need this," she had said, kissing me on the cheek. And I had believed her, but I had still made sure it was airtight. "She gets nothing," my lawyer said, confirming what I already knew. "No house, no assets, no money. If she fights it, she'll lose in court." I exhaled slowly, staring at the city skyline beyond the window. "File the paperwork in the morning. I want everything ready in case she shows up at my place," I said. He nodded. "It'll be in motion before she even wakes up." There was nothing to transfer, nothing to negotiate. Everything was already mine. Camila just didn't know it yet. The morning light crept in through the curtains, casting a soft glow across the bedroom. Camila stirred, stretching lazily, her body still warm from sleep. She reached across the bed, but her hand met only empty sheets. Her brow furrowed as she blinked away the last remnants of sleep. He was gone. She glanced at the clock. It was later than she thought. Max should have been home by now. Camila sat up, running a hand through her hair as she grabbed her phone from the nightstand. No messages. Not a single missed call. That was strange. He always called when he landed. Always. Maybe his flight got delayed. Maybe he was stuck in meetings. She padded downstairs in her robe, half expecting to hear the familiar sounds of him in the kitchen, setting down his bags, pouring himself a coffee. But the house was silent. Too silent. Something about it felt off. She checked her phone again, refreshing her messages, her email, anything. Still nothing. Camila frowned, staring at the blank screen. She shot him a quick text. "Hey babe, when are you coming home?" She set the phone down and waited. 5 minutes. 10. She checked again. Still no response. Her fingers hovered over the call button. She tapped it. The line rang once. Then a robotic voice cut in. "The number you have dialed is no longer in service." She pulled the phone away from her ear, frowning. That didn't make sense. She tried again. Same result. Her stomach twisted, a creeping unease settling in. She called again. Then 5 more times. Nothing. Camila's breath came a little faster as she clicked over to his work number. Maybe he left his phone somewhere. Maybe there was a problem with his carrier. Another automated response. Disconnected. Her hands felt cold as she set the phone down. Something was wrong. Very wrong. By the time evening rolled around, her nerves were frayed. She had tried calling his office, his colleagues, even checking his social media. Nothing. It was like he had vanished. Desperate to shake the feeling, she decided to go out. A night with friends would help. A few drinks, some music, a distraction from the uneasy feeling gnawing at her stomach. At the bar, she laughed a little too loud, talked a little too fast, trying to convince herself that everything was fine. It was probably just a misunderstanding. He would call her in the morning. She ordered another round of drinks and reached for her card, handing it over without a thought. The bartender swiped it once. Then again. He frowned. Sorry, it's declined. Camila blinked. What? He turned the screen toward her. Transaction denied. Her mouth went dry. Try it again, she said, forcing a laugh. The bartender gave her a look but humored her. Declined. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the bar. She grabbed her phone and opened her banking app. Access denied. Her breath caught. She tried again, logging in with her password. Nothing. She switched to another account. Locked out. Camila's heartbeat pounded in her ears. Every single one of their joint accounts was gone. The credit cards frozen. All she had left was the $500 in cash sitting in her bag. The uneasy feeling she had ignored all day sharpened into cold, hard panic. She barely made it through the rest of the night, her mind spinning, replaying every conversation she had with Max over the past few weeks. Had she missed something? By the time she got home, her fingers were shaking as she tried to call him again. Still disconnected. She barely slept that night, her mind running wild with possibilities. Morning came, and there was still no sign of him. Then, just before noon, there was a knock at the door. Her heart leaped. She rushed to open it, expecting to see Max standing there, exhausted but home. Instead, she found a courier in a dark uniform, holding a clipboard. Camila Ortiz? He asked. Yes, she said quickly. Did my husband? The man didn't even look up. He just handed her an envelope. She frowned and took it, glancing at the front. Eviction notice. Her breath caught in her throat as she tore it open. Her house. Their house. Listed for sale. Her name wasn't on anything. Not the deed. Not the mortgage. Not the bank accounts. Max wasn't just gone. He was removing her from his life. She had nothing. Camila sat at the kitchen table, phone in hand, staring at the screen as if willing it to ring. The house was silent, emptier than it had ever felt before. She had spent the last hour calling every number she could think of Max's work, his friends, even old business contacts. Nothing. Every call went to voicemail. Every text remained unread. Her hands trembled as she tried his sister next. Maria, please, I need to talk to him, she said as soon as the call connected. There was a pause. Then, Maria's voice came through, cold and sharp. You have some nerve calling me. Camila flinched. Please, just tell me where he is. I need to explain. He doesn't want to hear it. Maria, please. You made your choice, Maria snapped. Now live with it. The line went dead. Camila pulled the phone away from her ear, her breath shaky. One by one, she tried everyone she could think of. His parents. His closest friends. Former colleagues. Blocked. Everywhere she turned, she hit a wall. Max had erased her completely, leaving no trace behind. Panic turned to frustration. She tried his best friend, Daniel. He always liked her, always had a soft spot for her. Maybe he would listen. But the text wouldn't go through. Blocked. Her fingers hovered over the screen, her mind racing. This wasn't possible. He couldn't have just disappeared. She had known Max for years. He wasn't the kind of man to act impulsively. He was patient, calculated. He thought things through. Which meant this wasn't done in the heat of the moment. He had planned this. Prepared for it. And when the time came, he executed it perfectly. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. She had been so sure she would be fine. That she could handle it. That no matter what, Max would always be there. But now, she was alone. No money. No home. No one willing to take her side. Her head dropped into her hands as the weight of it all settled in. There was no way to fight back. No way to undo what she had done. She had ruined everything. And she had no one to blame but herself. The address wasn't easy to find. It had taken months of searching. Months of calling old acquaintances, lingering outside places where she knew Max used to go, trying to find a single person who would give her the smallest clue. At first, it was hopeless. His family had completely shut her out. His friends, even the ones who had once been friendly to her, refused to acknowledge her existence. But she was desperate, and desperation made people persistent. Eventually, persistence paid off. A former coworker of Max's had let something slip, just a small detail in passing. He's still around, just moved to a quieter place. That was all she needed. From there, she pieced things together. A few more calls. A little more digging. And then, finally, she had an address. Now, standing in front of his new home, she hesitated. It was nothing like the house they had shared. Smaller, more modest. The yard was plain, without the carefully landscaped hedges she had insisted on at their old place. The walkway leading to the front door was just simple concrete, no decorative stone. Everything about it was different. And yet, it was his. He had rebuilt his life here, without her. Her stomach twisted as she stepped out of the car and walked toward the door, each step heavier than the last. She had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times, going over every possible reaction he might have. Would he be relieved to see her? Would he be angry? Would there be a chance, even the smallest one, that he would forgive her? She raised a hand and knocked. A few seconds passed. Then the door opened. Max stood there, looking at her. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. She had prepared for anger, maybe sadness, even resentment. But she hadn't prepared for this. He didn't look hurt. He didn't look furious. He just looked finished, as if she was nothing more than a memory, as if she had already been erased. Her breath caught in her throat. She had spent months agonizing over this, wondering what she would say, how she could make things right. But now, standing in front of him, she felt smaller than she ever had before. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to speak. Max, She barely got the words out before he moved. Without a word, he reached to the side and picked up an envelope from a small table near the door. He held it out to her. Confused, she took it, her fingers trembling as she flipped it over. Her name was printed neatly on the front. She hesitated, but her hands moved on their own, opening the envelope and pulling out the papers inside. Then she saw it. Finalized divorce decree. The ink was dry. The signatures complete. It was already done. Her chest tightened. Max, wait, But he wasn't finished. With the same calm, detached expression, he pulled his phone from his pocket, tapped the screen a few times, and turned it toward her. The blood drained from her face. It was a photo. That photo. The one he had taken that night. Her. Wrapped around another man. Her body pressed against him, peaceful, unaware, completely lost in another world. She sucked in a sharp breath, her vision swimming. Max, please, she whispered, her voice cracking, reaching out as if she could somehow undo what was right in front of her. He didn't move. Didn't blink. You don't understand, she continued desperately. I wasn't thinking. I was lonely. You were always working, always gone. It just happened. But it didn't mean anything. Max let out a slow, humorless chuckle. Didn't mean anything? His eyes darkened, but his voice remained eerily calm. That's supposed to make it better? You threw away everything we built for something that didn't mean anything? Her hands shook. I made a mistake, Max. I know that now. I'll do anything to fix this. Just, please don't let this be the end. He exhaled through his nose, shaking his head. You don't get it, do you? Please, she whispered, tears brimming in her eyes. I love you. He laughed, but there was no warmth in it. Just emptiness. No, Camila, he said coldly. You love the life I gave you. You love the security, the comfort. But me. He took a step back, his expression unreadable. You didn't love me enough to stay faithful. You didn't love me enough to think about the consequences. And now that you're standing in the wreckage of your own choices, now you realize what you had. She pressed a hand to her mouth, but he wasn't finished. Where was this regret when you were in our bed with him? His voice was sharp now, cutting through the last of her excuses. Where was this, love, when you let another man take my place? She let out a choked sob. I was stupid, she admitted. But you were gone so much. I thought you didn't care anymore. You thought I'd never find out, he interrupted. You thought you could have both, your little affair and a husband waiting at home, none the wiser. He shook his head. You weren't stupid, Camila. You were selfish. She wiped at her tears, trying to find anything that could change his mind. But the look in his eyes told her there was nothing left. For months, she had lived in regret. For months, she had clung to the hope that if she could just see him, just talk to him, she could make things right. But now, standing here in front of him, she realized the truth. There was no fixing this. Max was done with her. Completely. He looked her over one last time, as if memorizing the moment, then stepped back into the house. His voice was calm, final. You made your choice, he said. Now live with it. And just like that, he shut the door in her face. The ink had dried. The papers were signed. It was officially over. Max sat in his new home, sipping coffee as he flipped through the morning paper. The quiet felt different now, not lonely, not heavy, just peaceful. For months, he had lived in the shadow of what happened, dealing with the legal process, tying up loose ends, making sure Camila was completely and permanently out of his life. Now she was. She had no home, no money, no access to anything they had built together. The life she once had, the comfort, the security, the future she had taken for granted, was gone. She had tried, of course. A few desperate emails. A couple of letters, long-winded and filled with regret. Apologies mixed with justifications. Promises to be better, to do better, to fix what was broken. He never responded. He had nothing left to say to her. She had made her choices, and she was living with them. And Max? He was finally living for himself. At first, moving on hadn't been easy. The betrayal had left scars, deep ones, and for a while, he thought they would never fully fade. Trusting people felt different. The idea of opening up again seemed impossible. But life had a way of surprising you. One night, a few months after the divorce was finalized, he had been at a friend's party. He hadn't planned on going. He never liked these kinds of things much before, but Daniel had insisted. "You've been locked away long enough," his friend had said. "You need to start living again." So he went, and that's where he met her. Her name was Claire. She wasn't flashy. She wasn't trying too hard to impress anyone. She was just real. They had talked for hours that night. No forced small talk, no awkwardness, just easy, natural conversation. She was kind, funny, sharp-witted. She listened. She had her own stories, her own struggles, her own dreams, and she wasn't afraid to share them. For the first time in a long time, Max found himself wanting to listen. And as the weeks passed, he realized something. He wasn't just moving on from Camila, he was rediscovering himself. There were no secrets with Claire. No late-night doubts, no second-guessing whether she was being honest with him. Everything was open, effortless. She made him laugh in a way he hadn't in years. She reminded him that love wasn't supposed to feel like a constant battle. It was supposed to feel easy. Now, as he sat across from her at dinner, watching the way her eyes lit up as she talked about something that had happened at work, he felt something he hadn't in a long time. Happiness. Not the fleeting kind, not the surface-level contentment he had convinced himself was enough during his marriage to Camila. This was different. This was real. Claire noticed his quiet smile and tilted her head. "What?" she asked, laughing a little. Max shook his head. "Nothing," he said. "Just glad I came to that party." She grinned. "Me too." And for the first time in years, Max knew. This time, he was with someone worth keeping. Share your thoughts in the comments. If you were in Max's shoes, would you have handled the situation the same way? Or would you have confronted Camila that night? If you liked the story, subscribe to the channel and give us a like.